Well, it is election day in the United States. Polling has begun in the midterm elections, and Vermont was the first U.S. state to open its polling stations. Polling has begun in New York and Kentucky as well. It is the first time that America is heading to the polls since Donald Trump's entry into the White House. More than 35 million voters have already cast their votes in the early polls on Monday. This year's number easily eclipses that of 2014, when less than 20 million early voters had gone to the polling stations on the day before the midterm elections. Majorities in both houses of the U.S. legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate, hangs in the balance. The major focus of the Republican Party's campaign has been on immigration. As for the Democrats, it was health care. Barack Obama spearheaded the Democratic Party's campaign. According to some opinion polls, Democrats could fare well in the House of Representatives. Remember, they just need to flip 23 seats to secure the majority in the lower house of the U.S. Congress. History says that midterm elections to the House of Representatives have mostly gone against the incumbent party. And for the Democrats, it could help that Trump's approval ratings are low as well. But the picture is not the same in the Senate, the upper house of the U.S. Congress. It may be difficult for the Democrats to wrest the Senate in spite of the fact that the Republicans are only holding the slim 51-49 majority here. If the Democrats manage to win back at least one of the two houses, it could significantly impact the Trump administration. First, the Democrats would be able to block key legislation proposed by Donald Trump. Second, investigations could be launched on almost everything possible if they do win a majority. And joining us to talk a little bit more about the midterm elections in the United States is Simon Marks, who joins us now from Washington. Simon Marks, thanks very much for talking to us this evening. Now, do you think that this is, in a sense, going to be a referendum on Donald Trump and the Republicans, as he himself has said throughout the campaign, and the initial numbers, of course, showing that many people are actually reaching the polling booth? What does that mean?
Yes, absolutely. Without question, this is a referendum on Donald Trump's presidency. He has himself described it in those terms, and he's really made it a referendum on his presidency, not just by addressing rallies in predominantly safe Republican parts of the country, but also by raising that issue of the immigration caravan from Latin America that he falsely claims is about to engage in an invasion of the United States. He's deployed 7,000 U.S. troops to the border with Mexico, even though that caravan is still weeks away from arriving at the American borders. You spoke about the turnout. We're all eager to see the extent to which Republicans and Democrats are able to drive their voters to the polls. Certainly, the early voting numbers suggested that there's a real determination on the part of voters to register their views at this election, but we don't really know what that means. Does it mean that Democrats are absolutely determined to stop Donald Trump in his tracks and turn him into a lame duck in the White House? Or, alternatively, does it indicate that Republican voters are heeding the warning that Donald Trump has given them, that radical Democrat socialists are planning to take over America? We simply won't know until the votes are counted in several hours' time.
Well, absolutely, Simon Marks. You are saying essentially that we don't know what the real vote really means here. But if the Democrats were to win a significant number in the House of Representatives, what sort of impact would that have on the economy, on healthcare, on obviously other issues that that are close to Donald Trump and his administration?
If the polls are correct and the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, but the Republicans narrowly hang on to control of the Senate, life becomes more complicated for Donald Trump because you, of course, need support in both houses of Congress to advance your agenda and govern. But life specifically may become more complicated for President Trump because the Constitution says impeachment proceedings against a president begin in the House of Representatives. So if the Democrats are in the majority there, they will have the opportunity, if they choose to exercise it, to go after President Trump personally, try to impeach him over ties between his campaign and the Russians, perhaps other ethics violations that they allege that he has perpetrated while in office. So certainly for President Trump, life becomes more complicated, but equally the Democrats in the House of Representatives become more of a target for Donald Trump's rhetoric, and Donald Trump loves nothing more than having a target.
Well, absolutely. Well, that's pretty much right, Simon Marks. But my last question to you then, you were talking about, of course, the impeachment process, if that was to begin at all. And, of course, you know, the allegations of interference by the Russians. Now, Facebook, we believe, has removed more pages as the FBI has warned of another Russian threat. Is that still a credible threat in these midterm elections as well?
Yes, and I think that's why the outcome of these elections are so hard to predict. You remember back in 2016, all the pollsters were confidently predicting Hillary Clinton was going to become president. Even on election day, the New York Times probability index had her at 90% probability of becoming president. And then we were all amazed that Donald Trump had won. There are imponderables this time around. Possible interference by Russia and maybe other governments internationally. Attempts to suppress voter turnout in some parts of the country, orchestrated in some places by Republicans, in other places by Democrats. It all adds up to a highly unpredictable and volatile situation here. So the votes will be counted in, what, about 12 hours' time? I would advise everybody to stay tuned.
Well, Simon Marks, we're counting down to the last 12 hours then. And thanks very much for talking to us. A pleasure there. Simon Marks joining us there from Washington. Thanks indeed. Pakistan now, where the Prime Minister Imran Khan today is chairing a meeting of the National Security Committee a day after India successfully completed its first deterrence patrol by a nuclear submarine, INS Ariant. The meeting is reviewing the security situation in the country amid the wide-scale protests against the acquittal of the Christian woman Asia Bibi. The top civil-military meet comes also a day after Imran Khan returned from his tour to China, where he signed 15 agreements. This is the first National Security Committee meeting summoned by the Prime Minister Imran Khan. Top military leadership, including Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee Chairman General Zubair Mahmood, are attending this meeting. Of course, Imran Khan will later on also be addressing the public as well. We are now joined by our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik from Islamabad. And Anas, what has prompted the National Security meeting immediately after Imran Khan's return from China?
Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has called for the first ever high-level meeting between the top civil and military brass, which is called the National Security Committee. Now, this comprises of the defense, the ministers of defense, interior, foreign minister, and the finance minister as well, along with the three heads of the military forces, the army chief, the air force chief, and the naval chief, and the heads of the intelligence agencies as well. That includes the DG ISI, DG MI, DG MO, and the DG IP present at this meeting. Now, the current meeting is currently ongoing. As to what prompted this Imran Khan to call this meeting was a lot of criticism that he had faced from his opposition parties. The fact that he has not been able to appoint a national security advisor. There was a range of issues since he's taken over. It's been roughly 75 days, and he's yet to come out with a proper strategy, taking the civil and military brass both together on board and taking them on board and getting a solution to that. That is the reason he's taken it. Now, just a range of issues that would be address in the National Security Committee that is currently ongoing at the Pakistani Prime Minister's office would be the internal security, the external security, the foreign policy, and the situation that has arisen in Pakistan post Asya Bibi verdict. Imran Khan is also likely to take the cabinet, the NSC into confidence on his recent trips to Saudi Arabia and China.
It's a blow for India's ruling BJP ahead of the crucial elections in the state assemblies and next year's Lok Sabha polls as well. The BJP has lost its stronghold of Bellary to the Congress. It could not also wrest the Mandya Lok Sabha seat from the JDS, even as it retained its stronghold of Shimoga. The Congress and the JDS also won 2 assembly seats in which by-elections were held in the state. The results are being seen as a test of the Congress-JDS alliance ahead of next year's general elections and a test for the BJP as well. Nishita is now joining us from Bengaluru for the very latest on these election results. And Nishita, what does this really signify in the state for both the alliance on one end and of course for the BJP as well ahead of general elections?
So the Congress-JDS coalition is certainly a shot in the arm, considering that questions had been raised on the longevity of the coalition itself, with many even questioning as to whether it will last beyond the Lok Sabha elections. So through this successful election for the coalition, if we may call it, they have proven that Congress can stitch up in a coalition with a regional party. It can come up with ways where an understanding can develop with the regional party in terms of seat sharing, in terms of campaigning. I think one of the biggest highlights for the Congress, of course, will be the district of Bellary. Bellary for the last decade or so was called the BJP bastion. It was only in the assembly elections this year that the Congress-JDS performed extremely well, and they won 6 out of the 8 assembly seats in the region. And then DK Shivkumar, who is believed to be the troubleshooter for the Congress, was put in charge of the Bellary region. It was plagued with infighting the few months ahead of elections. Congress leaders, 2 tall leaders from the region, Satish and Ramesh Jarkiholi, were at loggerheads with DK Shivkumar. But now V.S. Ugrappa, who was considered an outsider for the region, who was an MLC, contested for the Congress and has won with a landslide majority. He has won with a majority, with a margin of over 2 lakh votes, which is 4 times the margin that Sonia Gandhi had managed to achieve in the region. Also for the BJP, the cause of concern will be the fact that they only retained Shivmoga, and not just that, but also because it was such a slender margin all throughout the counting. In every single round, you saw Madhu Bangarappa of the JDS giving a very stiff fight to B.Y. Raghavendra, both of them sons of former chief ministers. B.Y. Raghavendra, son of B.S. Yediyurappa, as well as Madhu Bangarappa, son of Bangarappa. And the last highlight, of course, for all 3 parties will be the old Mysuru region. The BJP seems to have made inroads in terms of increasing its vote share, but at the same time, the JDS has, of course, established its position to consolidate the Vokaliga votes. But Congress has not really proven that it has been able to convert its Congress votes to JDS because the cadres in the region were unhappy.
Okay. All right, Nishita, thanks very much indeed for joining us for the latest from Karnataka and the elections there. A shot in the arm, certainly, for the alliance of the JDS and the Congress, not so much for the BJP there. The South Korean First Lady Kim Jong-suk is on a 4-day visit to India. She is attending the grand celebrations for Diwali in the temple town, the birthplace of Lord Ram. Kim Jong-suk attended the groundbreaking ceremony of the Queen Hu Memorial Park earlier today. She spoke about the ties between the 2 countries and hoped for a flourishing relationship for the years to come as well.
If we light lamps together, we can overcome darkness. I pray that every house where a lamp is lit, there is presence of Goddess Lakshmi, and may her blessings be with you. I pray that the friendship between India and South Korea, which is decades old, flourishes and both countries progress together.
And of course, these are those beautiful live visuals now that you are seeing from Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh of that Diwali celebration where the First Lady of South Korea is. 1 million lamps adorn the banks of the river Sarayu. The Korean First Lady will also be attending the festival in the city. Those beautifully lit lights there on the banks of the river. So festive season, of course, in full swing there in Ayodhya, and on Monday as well, the South Korean First Lady met Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj as well. Ayodhya is special, we believe, for South Korea. Many South Koreans believe that they can trace their ancestry back to the city. This belief comes from several historical Korean stories which say that an Indian princess married a South Korean king and started a dynasty. According to the legend, an Ayodhya princess had visited Korea in 42nd AD and was given the name Hyo Hong-hok after her marriage with King Suro. King Suro is the founder of the Korean kingdom of Karak, and these visuals now coming of the South Korean First Lady's visit to Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh, which is lit up for Diwali and the festival as well of lights. Well, in other news now, 12 people have been confirmed dead after severe flooding in Italy, bringing the nationwide death toll from a week of extreme weather to 29. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte of Italy said that the cabinet meeting would be convened this week to declare a state of emergency and to come up with the first package of aid for areas affected as well. Our correspondent Sumit Chaturvedi is getting you more details.
From Trentino in north to Sicily in south, Italy has been hit by devastating floods and storms, and as you can see behind me, rains are still continuing. We are in Milan, which is near Veneto region that has been hit by floods and storms. The capital city of Veneto region, Venice, has been hit by floods for the first time. Scores of people have died as bridges have collapsed, and breaking the boundaries, rivers have entered into cities and towns. Thankfully, tourism has not been hit much because it's a low tourist season. Well, Italy hopes it will be able to recover from this kind of flood and storms at least before Christmas this year. This is Sumit Chaturvedi signing off from Milan for Wion World is One.